Welcome back to our midweek Bible study. We are in Luke chapter 7, verse 18. We've had a couple of action-packed weeks, haven't we? With the sermon on a level place, and then the centurion's servant, the widow's son at Mead. All of this stuff is building momentum, and the last verse we looked at, 7:17, said the news about this was spreading throughout Judea and the country. Really, the country means surrounding countryside there. And it comes to the knowledge of John the Baptist. Now, John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin. He baptized Jesus. He saw the dove come out of heaven and the voice, "This is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased." He knew very well who Jesus was. That's important to understand what's about to happen next. John's disciples told him about all these things Jesus was doing. Calling two of them, he sent them to the Lord to ask, "Are you the one who was to come? Or should we expect someone else?" When the men came to Jesus, they said, "John the Baptist sent us to you to ask, are you the one who was to come? Or should we expect someone else?" Well, that's hurtful. Why would he say that? Well, there's only really one explanation for this, and that is that John the Baptist was trying to goad Jesus into getting about doing what John the Baptist thought he was supposed to do. Undoubtedly, John, like almost every other Jew, believed that Jesus was going to establish an earthly kingdom. He was going to drive out Rome, drive out the Greek influence, Hellenism, the Greek influence in the culture, drive out the false teachings of Pharisees, Sadducees, and the like, and reestablish true worship in Jerusalem and reestablish the kingdom with Jesus on the throne, the kingdom roughly David's borders. In other words, expand it back to its highest peak. That's what people expected. And that's why a lot of Jews still don't accept him today, is that he didn't establish an earthly kingdom, and they say that that's part of the prophecy, and Jesus didn't fulfill it. Even in Jesus' day, they repeatedly tried to make him king, or after his resurrection, some of his apostles said, "Is it now that we ride into Jerusalem?" They all believed this, and Jesus kept saying, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it was, my Father would fight for it, and my followers would fight for it, but that's not what we're doing." Did he have a kingdom? Yes, the kingdom of heaven. But don't make the mistake here of thinking that we're on earth and the kingdom of heaven is up there. Certainly the kingdom of heaven is wherever God is, but that also means down here. It's supposed to be down here too. We are supposed to be his kingdom, not by overthrowing a government, not by sitting on thrones ourselves or getting our guy on a throne, but rather following Jesus. And here Jesus has been teaching, and you can almost hear John the Baptist's head going, well, he's teaching, he's saying really nice things, and he's able to heal the dead, I'm told, and to heal the sick, rather raise the dead, and heal the sick at a distance. He should be able to get this going. John the Baptist had had many enemies, and he knew Herod was one of the greatest of the enemies, and Herod would end up being the cause of John's execution later. Murder, really, is no other word for it. John didn't know that at the time. He knew Herod was his enemy. In fact, John had pretty much made that happen by calling him out and making sure he knew that John the Baptist considered him his enemy. They were already going like this, and the whole dancing of Salome thing was just an excuse to get him gone. But John, you remember the cleansing of the temple stories? Well, John evidently thought that's what Jesus was supposed to be doing about everything. Just going in and driving it out and firmly establishing new stuff. And I don't blame John at all. First of all, it would have been very easy to expect that. The prophecies look like that. Second, it's what we want. Don't you look at the crime in the world, the wars in the world, the economic difficulties in the world, and wish God would just come sort it out? And no wonder so many people fall into end times fantasies about Jesus coming and leading this army here, and then this will be overthrown, and some people right off the earth, and then the next thing you know, there's going to be this throne in Jerusalem and a red heifer somewhere, and they get into this wild stuff by just chopping up the book of Daniel in ways it was never meant to be used, and then chopping it up and saying, well, it means, a day means this here, but it means this here. And I mean, to find a way to make the math work. And they've been doing this for 2,000 years, and every single generation thinks it's the one. We're the special ones. And we're all disappointed that Jesus hasn't come down to squash our enemies yet. But God's not in the squashing enemies business. Because if he was, we'd be dead too. All of us take turns making God unhappy, and yet he has patience and love for us. But John the Baptist was upset, and so he was poking Jesus with a sharp stick here, basically. But Jesus did not take the opportunity to be offended. I'll say that again. Jesus did not take the opportunity to be offended. Instead, he understood. And so at that very time, Jesus cured many who had diseases, sicknesses, evil spirits, gave sight to many who are blind. In other words, he's already done all this stuff. Surely John would have noticed. And I love the way this is phrased. He'd done all these things. So he replied to the messengers, go back and report to John what you have seen and heard. The lame receive sight. The blind receive sight. The lame walk. Those who have leprosy are cured. The deaf hear. The dead are raised. The good news is preached to the poor. And then he says this. Listen carefully, those of you who like the drama and are running around with end times fantasies that are just going to be disappointed. Blessed is the man who does not fall away on account of me. Blessed is the man who's not disappointed with the way he does his job. Jesus does his job. I'm a little uncomfortable here. Are you uncomfortable here? I think you should be uncomfortable here. Because whether or not you've admitted it to yourself, much less brought it up in a prayer to God, we get disappointed with the way Jesus does his job. We do want that Elijah-esque type Mount Carmel experience where the bad guys get hit by lightning and fire and sword. We want that in moderation, but we want a little bit of that. And Jesus says, I hope you don't fall away. What you see is what you get. Sometimes we need to give up on the God we want and accept the God who is. After John's messengers left, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John and said, can you believe the nerve of that guy? No, he didn't. He didn't. I bet a lot of people were thinking that, though, because of what Jesus said. He turns to them and says, what did you go out in the desert to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear expensive clothes and indulge in luxury are in palaces. But what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, I will send my messenger ahead of you and will prepare your way before you. I tell you, among those born of women, there is no one greater than John. Yet the one who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. What? Well, first of all, notice this. John was goading Jesus by intimating he was inadequate. He was doing an inadequate job, or he was slow walking something that was too important to be slow walked. Jesus responds by elevating John. Nobody born of woman's been greater than John. He's fantastic. And if you think he's rough and you think he should tone things down, what did you expect? Who did you go out to see? I've had two of those experiences, those moments in my life. One church asked me to come and work with them, and I was there for almost 10 years. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. But it was a rocky start with one of the elders. The elders are like a church board, for those of you that don't have them. But they have not just financial leadership, but spiritual leadership. They're like shepherds over the flock. So I don't know. I think they had 12 or 14 elders at this congregation. It was sizable. And after about 6 or 8 months, one of them said in a meeting to me, he said, I think you use humor in your sermons, and I don't think humor belongs in sermons, and I really need you to tone that down. Now, the other elders kind of looked at each other. They obviously had not been apprised of this man's planned comment. And before they could say much, when the man was finally done, I just leaned out and looked at him, and I called him by name, and I smiled. And I said, "Who do you think you hired?" And he got really quiet. And I said, "You hired me. And this is what you get. Were you aware you hired me?" Now, I would love to tell you that he and I became best of friends, but he just wasn't really happy with me. And I tried, even took him golfing a few times. He got mad there too, because I would smile and laugh sometimes. And he thought golf was serious business, like, I don't know, heart surgery. So it just didn't work. And eventually he moved within a couple of years to be closer to family, to another state. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it worked that way. Another church that I hired, one of the elders was doing things that not to be done. And I had pushed him on it a couple of times, pushed him on it again, pushed him on with people in the room, and he just kept doing it. Finally, one day I came in and I said, "You need to understand that I don't think you can be an elder here." And he was saying, "Well, you don't get to make that decision." And I just pointed out the window, and there was the congregation. They'd gathered. I said, "The sheep agree. You're no longer a shepherd." And he looked at me and he said, "How can you do this?" And I looked at him and I said, "Who do you think you hired? You hired a gunslinger. That's what you get. You can't get away with what you're doing. It's over." I hated doing that. I've never done that before that time or after that time. I'll never do it again. I'm pretty sure. I'm not in that situation. Who did you hire? Who did you marry? Who is this person? Who is Jesus? This is who you take. This is who you get. This is the God who is. And Jesus was given the same benefit to John the Baptist by saying, "Who did you expect? You didn't go out expecting somebody with fine clothes and luxuries. He was a wild man out in a prophet in the wilderness. That's who you went to see. And well, that's what he was. And that's who he is. He's rough, and that's who he is. And Jesus accepted that. Not everybody has to be like me. Not everybody has to be like you. And nobody has to be like the person you want them to be. That's between them and God. And Jesus turns around and validates John. But then that last line bothers a lot of people, that the least in the kingdom of heaven will be greater than he. It doesn't mean that they're going to be a better person than John the Baptist, but they're going to know more than John the Baptist knows right now. They're going to understand more than John the Baptist, because John the Baptist is still waiting for the kingdom to come with fire, when Jesus brought it with love. And those of us that understand that, we get it more than John the Baptist did at that time. John the Baptist is in heaven and a very happy individual right now. But at that time, all the people, even the tax collectors, when they heard Jesus' words, acknowledged that God's way was right because they'd been baptized by John. But the Pharisees and experts in the law, always watch for them, in the law rejected God's purpose for themselves because they had not been baptized by John. This is a parenthetical statement. It most likely is in the oldest manuscripts. It is in the oldest manuscripts. It most likely is original, but it's parenthetical. So it's kind of off to the side saying, the people that society did not accept, like the tax collectors, even them, they accepted what was being said because they were baptized by John. So in other words, John, even though he didn't get it, he was the gateway, that brought a lot of people to Jesus. And so he's to be praised. He is to be honored, lifted up. But the Pharisees and the experts of the law had not let this wild, uncouth, probably smelly guy baptize them. So they didn't get it. Jesus then turns around and looks at this kind of people and says, to what then can I compare the people of this generation? What are they like? They're like children sitting out in the marketplace and calling out to each other, we played the flute for you, but you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not cry. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you say, he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you said, here's a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is proved right by all her children. What does all that mean? It means this: you cannot call the shots for God. You can't tell God what he ought to do. Oh, I know, I've done it enough. I'll do it more. Say, God, I really think this is what needs to happen. I think all of us like to serve God. We just want to serve him in an advisory capacity. Jesus says, I'm not going to dance to your tune, and I'm not going to cry when you want me to cry, and I'm not going to respond the way you want me to respond. You don't call the music to this dance. You don't decide. He said, John the Baptist, look at him. He didn't either. He was just like me. When he came, he didn't eat fancy food. He only ate the wild stuff. We know, the locust and wild honey stuff. And he never touched wine. And you said, he must have a demon to live like that. And he says, now I come along and I eat with you and I drink with you. And you say, he is a glutton and a drunkard. And he says, we'll see. That's what that means. Wisdom is proved right by all her children. We'll see. It wasn't that long ago he'd been saying, you'll know the tree by the fruit it bears. Where's the pharisaical fruit? Well, a lot of people have pharisaical ideas about the Pharisees as a group. The fruit didn't work well, did it? Jesus' followers are still here. They're still out in the world. And right now, in fact, after decades of decline, churches have started picking up young Gen Z and Y people, especially young men. They're turning back to Scripture. Many of them don't join a particular denomination, but they join people like us and just want to be Jesus's people on the planet. What is the fruit of your work? He's saying here, we'll see. We'll see who's right. Those that are judging us, or those like John the Baptist and me, Jesus, just living our life, doing the best we can, doing what's good. Well, now, one of my favorite stories, and I'm going to have to do this in the next 12 or 13 minutes, which really is a bummer because it's a great story. I'd like to go longer. Now, one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, so he went. Again, Luke has that "so he went" phraseology he uses a lot. And so he went with tax collectors, so he went with sinners, so he went with Pharisees, so he went to heal the centurion's worker. You get the idea? This idea of Jesus just, okay, I was asked, so I'll go. Now, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. Now, a couple of things. One, if a Pharisee asked you to come to a Pharisee party, would you go? I wouldn't. I'd say nope. Because I cannot think of anything pleasant that's going to happen in a room full of judgmental people who consider it their job to hunt for specks of sawdust in my eye, regardless of the planks that are in their own eye. Jesus goes. So Jesus is better than I am, and I need to learn from him. Fair enough. They recline at table. Back then, they believed that you digested your food much better if you ate semi-reclined. You would be propped up on one arm, and your feet are at an angle away. They're not straight out, but they're at an angle away, so you can get more people in a smaller area. And generally speaking, almost always, this is outside. You didn't have a dining table inside. You set up things outside. And your property is generally marked by a row of stones or sticks. And then you would have your ovens outside as well. They were not inside the house. They were clay, brick, or mud made out there, and that's where you cooked, and you'd bring it, and everybody in the whole neighborhood knows that you're doing it because it's right out there in front of everybody. That includes the poor. And there were rules, very, very plain and very easy to understand rules given in the Old Testament. People like this Pharisee, who seems to be actually a pretty good guy, doing his best, would make extra food, not for doggy bags for the people to take home, but rather after they had finished eating, the people were to step away from the meal and go elsewhere to have their discussions so that the poor people could come to the table and eat whatever is left. And usually it wasn't table scraps. Like I said, people tried to make more. The Jews were very good about this, and they're still very good about taking care of their communities, to make more so that there is some for the poor. The poor's job is to wait. They are to wait at the rim of the property, on the borderlines there. They're not supposed to come any closer to the table. When a woman who had lived a sinful life in that town learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster jar of perfume. And as she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. Now, kissing feet was a sign of obeisance, or you are so far above me. And so a lot of kings used to have you kiss their feet. A lot of popes did that too, and bishops as well. I know. And it was a sign of, I belong to you, I am nothing, I'm the dust at the ground. So that's what this woman is doing. But there's another subtext here, which is really difficult to explain because it's a cultural thing using a different phraseology to express something. I'll just come out and say this. Touching the feet was considered sexual. And no woman was allowed to touch a man she wasn't related to. No woman's allowed to touch a rabbi. No rabbi is allowed to be touched by a woman who is known as a sinful woman. She was a sex worker. There's no other way to put it. We know this from the terms used. The thing is, we don't know why. Is it because she was a widow and she had to care for children, had no other way to make money? Was she a slave being pimped out by her master? Was she a woman who had just made a series of really bad choices and gone from man to man to man? Don't know. I find it fascinating that we don't know. That means it's not our business to know. It's not our business to decide how worthy or unworthy she is. She's doing this, kissing his feet, wiping his feet, the tears off with her hair, which, again, in these societies, hair is hidden. It is considered a sexual part of the body. It's certainly not done like this. Now, I want to stress Jesus is doing nothing untoward sexually at all. This is a cultural thing that would have given all the Pharisees around there either hiccups or an aha, I knew he was an evil person, look at what he's letting happen feelings. One of the two. There's no middle ground here. When the Pharisee who'd invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man was a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of woman she is. She's a sinner. Ooh, no, she's not like us. She's a sinner. Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. 2 men owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii. Think of a denarii as 1 day's wage. So a year and a half's wages. The other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back. So he canceled the debts of both of them. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon said, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt canceled. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman and he said to Simon, do you see this woman? That's hilarious. That's all any of the people had been able to look at, think about the entire time. They are not digesting anything at this stage. They have been not knowing what to say. This is so outrageous. Now, before you start thinking those stupid Pharisees, I want you to think about this. If you go to a brick and mortar church, great. Or if you watch us online, great. Whatever venue you use. Let's say that next Sunday, the minister is halfway through the lesson. All of a sudden the door opens. And here comes Bubbles LaRue, a well-known sex worker in your little town. Been a sex worker for a long time. Everybody knows her. She's still wearing her stuff. Still got the hair. In her big high heels, she walks right up to the minister, shoves him backwards into a chair. Assume a chair is there. Yanks his shoes and socks off. Starts crying on his feet and kissing him. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there and go, oh, praise Jesus. No, you're not going to do that. Don't lie to yourself. You're going to go, what's happening? I don't understand. This seems inappropriate. That's what you'll be thinking. And if you're a Pharisee of any type, now there are Pharisees in pretty much all churches, you're going to be outraged and thinking we need to call a meeting to deal with how we're going to deal with things like this. Minister's letting this happen. He's letting it happen. Didn't even pull his feet back. He's letting it happen. He's saying nothing. Are you kidding me? Need to fire him, and we need to beef up security because they're not handling this. That's what we'd be saying. We are the Pharisees in this story. And until you get that, you don't get the story. I came into your house, talking to Simon. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, so this has been going on quite a while, has not stopped kissing my feet. Now, she wasn't allowed to come from the wall. All the rules were being broken here. Jesus, just calm. You did not put oil on my head, but she's poured perfume on my feet. Wow. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, for she loved much. You know what he didn't say? He didn't say her sins have been forgiven because she's repented. She's going to live a straight life now. You just watch. She's repented of that sins. She's holy now. She's going to be holiness from now on. She's holy. He didn't say that. Her sins were forgiven because she loved much. Love trumps law every single time in the life of Jesus. Every single time. Try to find a time it doesn't. Love trumps law. Mercy trumps law. To where Paul says, all that's left is faith, hope, and love. And he didn't go on to say, and doctrines and covenants and council meetings and books of discipline. And no. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Because those who love much are forgiven much. He adds, but those who've been forgiven little, love little. Those, by the way, everybody's been forgiven much, but there are a whole lot of people who think, my sins weren't that bad. I don't have little sins. People over there have bad sins, have big sins, are really, really bad people. My sins, very little. Insignificant, really, but I appreciate Jesus taking them away. That's kind of the Pharisee attitude, and he's saying, those that have been forgiven little just love a little. Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. The other guests began to say among themselves, because now the uproar, who is this who even forgives sins? Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Past tense. Go in peace. Did you notice what he didn't say? He never told her to change her life. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she was a slave being pimped out. Maybe she was a widow who had no other way to feed her children. And Jesus didn't tell her, you stop that. It's dirty stuff. He didn't do that. He said, you've loved much. Your faith has saved you. You go in peace. It's fine. I've got you. And that's what Jesus says to us, to you and to me with our sins. As great and vast as they are, he says, if you love much, you're forgiven much. I've got you. Keep that in mind this week. And we'll talk again next time. Cheers.